Welcome back to episode 4 of the podcast. How's it going, Nick? What's up?
Good, good. We are recording this time, so I'm feeling great.
Nice. That's good. Yeah, last week was a mess. So, in case you're looking on YouTube for episode 3, that's going to be on Spotify as the audio only version because we had some technical difficulties. But anyway, with that out of the way, yeah, Nick, so what's up? What have you been thinking about regarding Tana? What do you want to talk about today?
Oh man, it's been a really busy week. Oh, well, yeah. Why don't we announce that we made the first major update to our Tana Fundamentals course?
Oh, yeah. Right.
So we've got a brand new super tags section, and we're going to be rolling out updates periodically for a long time to come. And so whenever you buy the course, this is shameless plug time. If you buy the course, you get every single update that we make anytime into the future. So I think this is really huge news. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
So no, that's really good stuff. Like Nick has been working really hard on the course update. So really excited for people to see that for sure. Like I say, shameless plug, but I think it's really gonna be an incredible resource for people. And of course, for anyone that is brand new to Tana Central, what we're doing here, we do have a free community you can join. You don't need to pay for anything in order to, ask us questions, interact in these like podcasts and so on. So yeah, that aspect is free. We do have the paid course, but it's really gonna be awesome. So yeah, feel free to ask us any questions if you have about that. But yeah, so that's pretty cool with Tana Central. In terms of like anything that's been happening in the world of Tana, there weren't many updates. I did see that there was a postings like before that. What is that called? I think it's just a community updates. What
Yeah,
is it
there's
called?
the
Let me see.
community node.
Yeah, anything there that caught your attention? I'm taking a look right now.
One thing that I've noticed as like
Mm-hmm.
an extended trend is there's
Yep.
always several new FAQs from Faye, which is
Mm.
it's just huge because previously there wasn't really a reliable way to find answers to these questions that like 60% of people have. And so I really appreciate that they keep adding to that compendium of FAQs.
Yeah, for sure. It's always cool to find new things. Cool. Yeah. So today not today, but like this week, in our school community, we had this really cool question, which is like, what is two things that you like about Tana and one bad thing? I think that was a really good topic, and that sparked some really interesting conversation. So, yeah, what was your favorite out of those?
Well, I love it when there's trends that emerge or patterns that I notice. And so one pattern that I
Mm-hmm.
saw was you mentioned yourself how for yourself,
Yep.
kind of Tana is lacking in like allowing you to really dive into long form content inside Tana. And then we just had one of our newest members said something along the same lines, like the good stuff about Tana. The was Tana capture and super tags and everything with those, but then the not so good, as he put it, was sometimes you can't just get those pesky nodes to go away when you want to work in like true paragraph form. So yeah, that is an interesting thing. And there was a discussion that you had with I think Ali is his name. Uh,
Yep.
and yeah, there was some back and forth on why don't you just X? And well, I guess I could, but I don't know. And like it's a really interesting use case where I don't know, I'm not quite sure myself where the problem lies, if it even is a problem. So yeah, I think that's
Mm.
fodder for conversation there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was taking a look at that right now. Yeah, Abhi, I
Hmm.
think that's his name.
Oh, actually, his there were two threads. The other one you made
Yep.
one dedicated to writing drafts for emails and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So basically, like one takeaway that I had was, I think there are workarounds if you really
Mm-hmm.
want to. Like you can, each node is a paragraph, but for some reason that's not quite the same. There's something about the appearance of a paragraph that is just different for digesting, reading, and I think for writing too.
Yeah. So like the general conversation is kind of like Nick was saying, like, is it possible to actually write long form? And just to keep it simple, let's talk about like writing a newsletter or blog post. Just for online purposes, just writing something that is long form. Let's say I don't know, like 1,000, 2,000 words, something like that. So writing that in Tana, I've been experimenting since last week. You talked about like this idea of like, okay, is it just doable to simply have every bullet point be in a paragraph, right? And what I've gotten from that is like I actually tried it and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to write a newsletter all in Tana. And I do have some ideas and it has some really cool benefits, but I guess the biggest disadvantage that I found from writing paragraphs in bullet points was that there's no spacing, there's no visual space between bullet points. So if you start writing a paragraph and then you write another one right underneath it, I think it just looks so cluttered. And I really wish there was that visual separation that happens in most software,
Hmm.
where like there's a gap, right? There's margin or padding, right?
Here,
And I was
here's
trying to hack
another.
that with
I
CSS.
have another
Yeah,
cheap workaround for you.
yeah, yeah.
Like
Tell
hit
me.
the enter button twice, so that would leave a gap between them.
Yeah. No, yeah. To be fair, it's not the worst workaround ever, because I did just use some CSS. Like there's Chrome extensions like Stylus. There's one called Tana Enhancer that was created by Andrea,
Hmm.
which is pretty helpful, a bit more beginner friendly, and those allow you to kind of like write some CSS code. And for anyone that's not familiar with CSS, you can literally ask ChatGPT to write you some quick stuff. I do know some CSS, but yeah, ChatGPT writes all my code for me always. So yeah, like I did manage to kind of like add more margins and stuff like that, but the problem was that also kind of affected a bunch of other things, and I didn't have enough control over the specifics that I wanted to alter. So yeah, that like what you say might be like the best workaround, just like adding line breaks manually.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it after seeing that conversation that happened in that thread, and I was thinking, I myself, like, first of all, I don't do a whole lot of actually like long form writing. When I am
Right.
using what could be long form writing, I'm mostly creating outlines for presentations or for YouTube videos
Mm,
or for the coursework that I'm doing, and like having bullet points is perfect for that. Um,
right.
and then, but when I do want to like write an email or something like that, I
Mm-hmm.
work in Tana and then I transition to the email writer, or I transition to when I was writing in Substack. I went into Substack after coming up
Yep.
with an outline inside Tana. And I didn't see anything wrong with that because if I want, I can link to the article that I end up making after the fact and attach that to, the object inside
Mm-hmm.
Tana. And I don't think
Right.
there's necessarily a lot of value in having the final form of the content, in the long form content in Tana itself, except for maybe eventually if I want AI to be able to read everything that I've written without having to like crawl the web or something like that. Then, but
Right.
I don't see a huge need for me to do the whole process inside Tana personally.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Like you say, there's definitely a benefit to having like the actual final results inside of the tool where you write it, like in this case, the Saitana, just later for searchability or just being able to kind of have a system to know when, if you write a lot of blog posts, for instance, right? Like just knowing when you mention something and just kind of having one single source of truth versus like having like various versions in different apps for like, blog post writing. But at the end of the day, that's not a massive deal breaker. I guess one of the most obvious questions, let's say you're writing an email, because that's a very simple example. So when you write an email in Tana and then you move it to, let's say, Gmail to continue writing it there, how do you deal with the bullet points? I think you did mention using Tana Publish and just working around like that. Like, what do you do?
It depends, but I'm trying to think back when I was writing for Substack. I just I actually just copy and pasted the bullet points and then
Hmm.
I typed around them and ended up deleting the bullet points eventually. That's kind of what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, to be fair, like you did make me realize last time that there's workarounds. I mean, I do find it quite annoying to have to delete the bullet points manually. I do see how
Mm.
for shorter stuff or just like very simple things is not a big problem, but when you do have like thousands of words and there's like 100 bullet points, like oh no. But yeah, either way, so that's definitely something that can be worked around. Just to share for anyone that is curious, like Nick was saying, like grabbing that node, just grabbing everything underneath it and just publishing all of that in the parent node and just using Tana Publish because that gives you kind of like a web page that you can essentially copy and that comes with that bullet points. So yeah, I don't think it's a super big problem. Like it's not a deal breaker again. Um, I personally really like formatting things in the tool where I used to write. So
Hmm.
let's say I want to write a blog post, right? And yeah, using things like Substack, I use ConvertKit and I use Webflow. Webflow is where I put my blog and then I send it on ConvertKit. So in order to do that efficiently, I do want to have like a single source of truth, ideally, where I can just copy from there and paste it both in ConvertKit and in Webflow
Hmm.
without having to like go through too many steps. Just I really like having the one single source of truth and then just pasting that into places,
Hmm.
right? Um, and in order to do that, ideally, I want to have the final format.
Hmm.
Now, there's ways to work around it. Like Tana Publish again is a good idea, but even headings and let's say like H2 headings, which is like well, for anyone that uses Markdown, is like two hashtags, but it's just like I don't know, like people, what do people use? Microsoft Word? I don't even know what people use these days.
Hmm. I think primarily, yeah, it really depends. But probably mostly like Google
Yeah,
Docs. Yeah,
Google Docs.
yeah.
Right, right. How do you do? I don't never use Google Docs. I kind of hate it, but I think you like it a bit more, right? So, how do you do headings in Google Docs?
Um, well, there's keyboard shortcuts. So I think it's
Right.
Alt Shift and then one, two, three, four, something like that.
Okay.
Or you can
Yeah.
select from the menu. Is that what you're asking,
Mm.
or?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, just kind of like tying back to that is like if people do have like headings and they want to export that into like the place where they're going to publish it, their blog posts or so on, it's definitely nice if those headings come properly formatted. That is one of the advantages of Google Docs. Like it's kind of this
Mm,
rich text format that you can just copy the headings over, which has definitely been a limitation with Tana, just kind of copying over those headings.
mm,
They don't always come as you expect them. It's kind of hard to have like heading trees because Tana right now does allow you to have a heading, but even if you copy that, it doesn't always come through
mm.
just because I don't know how they're dealing with headings. It's
Yeah.
just a weird thing. Data publish does help, but it does complicate some other things for sure. So
I
yeah,
I think
that's where I'm at.
I may have had an aha moment
Yeah.
because the way that you structure things are completely different in Tana. Like if you have the
Mm-hmm.
same, you have an article that's written out in Google
Right.
Docs or something, and then
Yep.
if you were to quote unquote properly redo that in Tana, then the heading would be a bullet point, and then that paragraph would be an indented bullet point under
Right.
that. And then there would be a
Yep.
couple points beneath that paragraph, maybe that you would break out separately, indented, even further. And
Right.
I wonder if that shift in mental framework is important, and if maybe you should maintain separation where like inside
Mm.
Tana proper you just don't do long form writing, and that's a good
Right.
thing. I don't know, but that's where my mind is
Yeah.
right now.
That's where I'm at because I've been kind of like saying like, okay, I really wanted to hack Tana to work, and I spent like a couple of hours just trying to use CSS, but they changed something in the in the code that you can't target like particular lines anymore. So if
Mm,
you want to change like the margin of something, it
mhm,
changes it for everything. And I just wanted headings to have like maybe bigger font size
mhm,
depending on a super tag that I add. I have a YouTube video like talking about like long form hacking in Tana, which is from someone that shared that code in the community, but that code is broken at the moment. So
mm,
that was a big frustration. And I did then, after just doing a lot of crazy testing, I did figure out ways in which perhaps I could hack it further in Tana. And I
mm,
think it's possible. But like you say, it just becomes a pain and it doesn't always allow you to have the best possible workflow. So right now I'm personally using Emacs for writing something called org
mhm,
mode. And yeah, it just combines, it's literally as if like, Tana is an outliner, Obsidian is a long form writing tool. Org mode is a mixture of both, but
mhm.
the biggest disadvantage is that you need programming knowledge and
Mhm.
annoying skills like that. So yeah.
I have a question. How would you
Mm-hmm.
feel if inside Tana, you know, maybe it was a command associated with a super tag or something, but there
Yep.
was a button that you could push for any collection of nodes, and it would be, uh, send to org, send to Emacs,
Yeah.
and all of
That'd be
those
so good.
bullet points would just go in, ready for you to manipulate in the Emacs environment in the Emacs way.
Yeah, that is so cool. And I don't think it's impossible because One thing is obviously APIs, just kind of sending information from one app to the other, but using org mode in Emacs, or let's just keep it in simpler terms, something that people might be more familiar, just Markdown files, which is just plain text files. For instance, Obsidian reads those. There's a bunch of tools that can read Markdown files. It'd be really nice if, like you say, you can just like essentially format things in a way and just download that as a local file that then you can manipulate in whichever way you want. So
Hmm.
that'd be really nice. And I was thinking of a lot of hacks, to be honest. Just I mean, it's very nerdy, but I'll tell you the concept, right? So just having like perhaps let's say a draft in Tana, right? Using super tags to tag different headings, to tag like maybe different levels of headings, as well as maybe quotes, bullet points, stuff like that. Just using super tags as a way to um, format things almost, right?
Hmm.
Like being like, oh, this is meant to be a heading instead of using the toggle for a heading. Then Oh, and then a really nice advantage of Tana for sure is that you can add like descriptions to bullet points, which is super nice, as well as the ability to add fields, meaning that you can add comments inside of that.
Hmm.
So I really like that feature a lot. That is not very easy to replicate in other apps. But then having all of these kind of like super text to format different things in Tana, but then copying all of this and putting it in your computer, and this is something I've been playing with quite a lot. Is like then using using Python code,
Hmm.
which I wrote using ChatGPT and just modifying it myself. Using that Python code to give it all the instructions. Be like, whenever you see the super tag that says like heading, then turn it into a heading two.
Hmm.
Whenever it says like heading three, turn it into heading three, and then
Hmm.
anything that is in a field under this name, comment it out because that's just meant to be a comment,
Hmm.
and that can produce a final document that I can then paste into my blog, then send into email. So
Hmm.
that's super possible, and I think that's what I've been doing with Emacs, right? With org mode, just kind of processing things because everything is in local files. It's a little bit easier to manage,
Hmm.
but I do see a lot of potential where it's just an extra step of copy pasting things. So it is doable, and it's a crazy workaround. Like if anyone's interested in that, feel free to join the community and ask me a question. That I can definitely give you the workflows. But yeah, that's a crazy workaround that I've been doing. Yeah.
You got my brain spinning on something. What if imagine you have two windows or two screens, and on the right window or screen you have a Tana publish version of what you're working on, and on the
Right.
left you have the regular old Tana version. But and so it's set up in such a way that tags do certain things and fields within those
Mm-hmm.
tags do certain things. And so inside Tana proper, you could be moving
Yep.
ideas in the macro way, moving the bullets and everything around. And depending on whether you're typing for a super tag or a field or whatever, then it will appear differently inside the Tana publish space. Like that's either what I'm talking about is either something that is weirdly complex in a way that just wouldn't work, or maybe there's like an even better solution than what anything that we're currently doing awaiting us there.
I like that a lot because I think that's super possible, right? Like, again, just going back to Emacs, for anyone that's never heard of Emacs, is kind of like a really old school editor. And, like 50 years ago it was created. And at the same time, there's something called Vim, which is, I was describing it the other day, just kind of shortcuts to navigate using just a keyboard. And what I personally use is Emacs plus Vim is called Spacemacs. I just use both so that I can just only use the keyboard in a really comfortable way that I'm familiar with, but then using the Emacs editor, which is essentially like a very old school way to do a lot of things in your computer, but I particularly make use of this thing called org mode, which allows you to do like really powerful stuff. Either way, all of that preface to tie it with what he said, which is that in org mode, there's this thing called org export that you can essentially set several parameters. Obviously, the more knowledge you have with programming, you can do more advanced stuff, but then you can configure the way in which you export the particular file. So it's very similar to what you're saying, where on
Hmm.
one side you can have the raw file, and then on the right you can have like the actual visual thing, maybe in PDF format or HTML or whatever you want. So Tana already does piggyback on that idea and just makes it really cool to be able to have Tana publish in that way. But it'd be really nice if we can configure things further, like you say, if we can define what a super tag does to the formatting.
Hmm.
That would be a dream. Whether that would be possible and super customizable, I don't know. I would love that. I would really, really like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
we got a lot out of that. Is there anything more on long form writing on that subject?
Yeah, I think that covers it for the most part. Like I'm obsessed with this idea of like long form writing with outliners. So if anyone's from if anyone's interested, do hit me up on the school community. You can join below, and I'll give you more of the workflows that I've been working on. So yeah, that should tie it for now. Yeah. So what else? Did you have any other topic in mind? If not, there's a couple of things that I saw in our community.
That's the big one that I had. So let's. What do
Mm-hmm.
you got?
Yeah, so again, coming from your post on like two good things about Tana, one bad thing, I saw that literally as we started this, we had a new comment. Yeah, so we have Christoph. Thanks for joining, Christoph. I was taking a look. He wrote like a really nice, extensive, just bullet points of his ideas of this, and I have a summary right here just to kind of read it out. And his whole takeaway is that Tana, the things that he really likes is like the Tana offers like adaptable structure for interlinking thoughts, right? So that's kind of like his main takeaway on something he likes. Like the ability to integrate tasks and nodes. That's another really cool thing. And one thing he misses, I don't know how familiar you are with this. You probably are more than I am, but like he says, he's missing a Gantt chart view,
Mm-hmm.
which, from how I understand it, I only know it from Notion, I believe, but you probably know a lot more about it. So what is a Gantt chart view?
Yeah, that's if you're trying to align timelines and you're thinking it's really
Mm-hmm.
imagine a calendar. If you're not familiar, imagine a calendar with all of
Mm-hmm.
the days are the vertical columns or days or hours or whatever your time measurement is. And then each task or project or campaign, whatever you're working on, is a horizontal bar. And you're able to see when things are starting and stopping, and ideally you're able to like see visualize dependencies between different things that you're doing too.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I've seen what it looks like, and I'm pretty familiar, but I never really used it much.
Mhm.
What are the advantages in general? Like, do you use this a lot or not really?
Having something like a Gantt chart for like a one or two person team, I think is something that would be nice to have, but
Mm-hmm.
with any existing technology, you would have to do a lot of setup and you would have to be pretty detailed and high functioning in how you're tracking all of your tasks and estimating timelines for projects and everything. Where when it's just a one or two person show, usually that's kind of a waste of time to go into that level of detail and worry that much about that sort of thing. But when you're in part of like a especially super large organization, that is used all over the place for tracking release schedules, having, roadmaps of what features are going to be worked on, which teams and which areas and in which product they're all being worked on, and understanding what things are at risk, what things come before other things and depend on this other team finishing something else before
Right.
this other team starts. Very useful the larger and more complex your organization is.
Right. Okay, that's really cool. Would you say it's mostly a tool for collaboration, or can it actually be very useful for an individual too?
I think it can be very useful for anyone. Uh, I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
I believe Christoph said that he's doing e-commerce. He might just be a one-man team himself, but maybe for something like e-commerce, there could be a lot of integrations, like a lot of Zapier stuff maybe going on with eBay or Amazon or whatever he's working with. And so maybe there is a lot of stuff that he doesn't need to be meticulously tracking himself. So he doesn't need to dedicate all that time into tracking of those, but he can have that calendar, that Gantt chart view of things so that he can track progress and understand dependencies. Maybe that's the case for him.
And yeah, he's describing how this is a really nice feature when you're trying to manage complex projects. And yeah, he does seem to be describing it like a bit of for collaboration and so on.
Mhm.
So I guess that's a good transition into like, what do you think is the future of Dana when it comes to collaboration? What are the things that you would really like to see there and so on?
I am more excited about Tana for collaboration than I thought I would be after we did our little experiment. We For anyone who didn't see the last episode or two, we played around with communicating inside Tana using voice memos and summarizing them using AI and going back and forth in kind of threads, being able to check off things that we had listened to so we could both know who was caught up to what degree. It was actually really nice. We kind of went back to like Slack for the most part, but I want to go back into using Tana again.
Hmm.
And I think one of the things that will be very useful is a notification system. And another thing is
Yep.
going to be providing when you have those messages in context of other stuff that you're working on. So we're using Asana for tracking tasks, for instance. We're not using Tana for that now, but my goal is I want to transition us into using Tana for all of those things, not just for the sake of it because we're Tana guys, but because it will actually make sense. And so, yeah, that's where I want to go with things. And that's why I'm actually, like I said, I'm more excited than I thought I would be because previously I just thought it was like, this is something for myself. This is something for taking notes, for, not managing tasks for myself. I didn't think it would necessarily be great for teams, but I see the promise there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. So, like personally, like the level of collaboration that I do is obviously with Nick. We're running Tana Central. We have a lot of tasks that we always communicate about, and then just on my personal channel, I do have my assistant, and he helps me with a bunch of really cool stuff, and that communication we do almost exclusively on Asana. Now with Nick, we use a combination of Asana and Slack and Tana, right? Like Tana with the workflow that Nick was describing, and then on the side of that, I do have a couple of one-on-one clients that I try to get them into using Asana, but I definitely see how they're not super familiar, not very comfortable. So just kind of trying to find what is the best tool for the particular needs that you have. I think that Tana, at least for the workflow that you and I have, Nick, I think can really solidify a lot of the scattered pieces that we have. Like, so Slack is great for just like it has a good notification system. Let's say that's
Hmm.
really good about it.
Yeah.
Asana, in my opinion, is really nice for like task management and project management. It just kind of makes it easy to kind of keep track of which task is pending for which project, as well as being able to even communicate in there as well. That's how I use it for with my assistant. Like we communicate just in Asana, but Slack has some really nice features. And one thing I really miss about Asana is that it doesn't have voice notes,
Hmm.
which Slack does have.
Yep.
But Slack has a limitation of 5 minutes, so that is a really annoying thing in my opinion. So now piecing that with the workflow that we're working on, like voice notes inside of Tana, I really love that. And
Hmm.
Tana does have the ability to um, keep track of tasks, similar to what Asana can do. So, like, if we can bring over that task management and project management system into Tana, which is already possible, it just I wonder how well it could work for collaboration, which is
Hmm.
not something I've done before. I've used it for myself, and I think it works decently well. Um, Lacking a bit of the mobile experience, which is the only disadvantage in my opinion. But then from there, I think it's totally possible. I guess the biggest feature really missing is just a basic notification system so that we have a way to notify the other
I
person.
believe,
Yeah.
and this is on my to-do list, but my understanding
Yep.
is notifications technically exist. And I think, but it's only technically. I don't think it's where
Mm.
we would want it to be yet. But
Yep.
this is one of those areas where I'm like, I have trust in the Tana team that they know what they're doing and they understand that this is something that will need to get better. But for now, they put something together so it exists at least.
Right, right. Interesting. Yeah, and I haven't really played with that because I think what you might be mentioning is just like, yeah, there's a little dot uh, that I think happens at the workspace level. I'm not really sure. Have you played with that a bit? I really am not super
I
familiar
haven't,
with it.
yeah, I haven't played with it, but I saw that it exists like a week ago or something,
Mm.
and I was like, aha,
Really?
yeah. So there is that little what is it? It's just a dot that happens in
Mm-hmm.
some icon somewhere in the but it's hidden in one of the corners,
Okay.
and now what I don't know is if I can trigger it by like mentioning
Right.
you on a
Yep.
ticket or something. That's one of the things that I need to research. But yeah, I would like a more
Mm.
robust messaging system where you would actually get like an email or maybe a pop-up notification, something more than this thing that
Right.
you have to actively seek out. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I got very curious and right now. Yeah, so like the system that I have with my assistant on my YouTube channel, it's all based in Asana's comments, right? Like I've been impressed how Asana has managed to be enough for that communication, replacing Slack because we did used to use Slack. So I wonder how much Tana can build like that common system because it could use fields almost, right? And as long as it has like a system, like you were saying, of like whenever you mention someone else or whenever it's something that someone has been assigned, like I mean, there is everything in Tana to be able to achieve that, right? It just fields and drop downs. I'd be like, oh, this is the person assigned to this. Like it sounds like it should be already possible. Like I
Mm,
wonder we should definitely experiment with that notification system that is already built in because I wasn't aware of it. I barely use that, so no.
hmm.
Yeah, sounds cool. We should
Yeah,
definitely give it a go.
definitely. I agree.
Nice. So just going on the theme with like two good things about Tana, one bad thing. We have Ian, part of the community. Welcome to the community, Ian. Yeah. So two good things. One, it has a fast iOS capture app with voice transcription and other capture methods. And then the other thing that he likes about Tana is like it has super tags and scripting that lies behind the whole super text system. And then
Hmm.
the not so good is yeah this is what you were already talking about, like the inability to have paragraphs, stubborn bullet points, and they don't know when to go and hide. So yeah.
Both in the conversations in community and when reaching
Hmm.
out in like messages or scheduling meetings, there are so many different use cases. Almost everyone is using Tana differently. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
for taking notes, like for studying. Other a lot. I've seen a lot of meeting notes being mentioned. Um,
Hmm.
but then otherwise, it's a lot of just kind of PKM. I don't know. What else have you heard?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember how much we covered this in a previous episode, but like space repetition, there's some room for that, and I'm really excited to see if Tana has some more built-in features into that because I really like that as a method of studying stuff.
Mm.
Part of obviously memorization, but also just kind of like being exposed to things that you think are valuable. And Stian has a workaround system, which is pretty cool. But yeah, go ahead.
I don't know why what you were talking about made me remember this, but my own post that started off that two good, one bad thing, my one
Yeah.
bad thing for Tana was whenever I'm going in deep on something and I hit the wall because I realize what I really need is I need some kind of if then or switching statements, some
Mm,
kind of logic that goes just beyond what is possible. And it's like, yeah, it's on the one hand, it's a nice problem to have because I'm able to do so much that got me to that point where that is a blocker. But on the other hand, I'm so close to like unlocking just such a next level of capability. So it's frustrating when you get to
mm,
that point and you realize
yep.
I either can't keep going or I'm gonna have to dedicate a lot of time to a complicated workaround and it might work.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And I was actually wondering how much of Tana you believe is going to become a tool that people can customize extensively versus it has a set a number of limited features. I mean, it's not super limited. Obviously, it has a lot of things, but there's there's levels to the levels of like how much customization you think Tana will allow. Do you think they do want to allow people to develop very advanced workflows themselves, or do they want to cap it at some point?
That's a good question. I think that, and I hope that what they're going to do is allow for as much customization and like just granular near programming, like maybe like very light scripting. Like that's as deep as it'll go from a
Hmm.
technical perspective, but allowing people to go as deep as they want, as long as they don't do something that could actually like bring the system down or something like that.
Right.
And one thing that I have in mind for that is like something that I don't think they'll ever allow that I would love them to be able to accomplish somehow would be using uh, live queries as filters for other live queries. But
Mm,
that could
wow.
easily create a recursion that never stops and would just They wouldn't bring the whole
explode.
Tana product down worldwide, but that person's personal Tana would just, yeah, it would
Yeah.
crash. And if you don't want to encourage users to do that, that sort of thing, because you're basically telling people, hey, roll the dice and maybe destroy your system.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing that I would really like to see is a bit more of CSS customization built in, just to kind of like modify the way things look. I do see how this might just end up breaking for a lot of people that don't know how to deal with CSS. And again, for anyone not familiar, it's just a way in which you can customize the way things look. Like for instance, Obsidian has themes, it has snippets. It'd be really cool. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think Rome does allow some of it. I've also used Remnote in the past. I think it does allow it. Just has like a custom place to modify your CSS. I guess if they just put warnings, be like, hey, if you're a beginner, don't touch this. Yeah, I do see why they might not like that idea. Just people copy pasting things from different forums, or just like messing things up too much, and then I don't know, like their mouse doesn't move, or like they can't click anywhere. So yeah, I do see how that would be a pain. But personally, I would like it. It'd be really nice if they allowed it somehow and just put warnings, be like, hey, don't turn this on.
Hmm.
So that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like to kind of answer your question from a different angle, I think there's going to be layers of Tana users. And so the very
Mm,
top layer are going to be people who they might not even know that they're using Tana because someone else has built some kind of note-taking system or task management, you know, quasi software thing that they buy on a
right.
marketplace or something, and they just use that. They
Hmm.
never think about it. It just works, and that's all that they need, and that's fine. But then there's like another level below that they start out with things like that, but they tinker around and they adjust things and make it their own. Then there's a level below that, and that's probably like the people who are actually building things, but they don't go super deep. They build using super tags and fields and stuff, but they don't go any deeper than that. Then below that is like the people who really they're the people who want to have the capability to have that
Right.
extended logic and those branching flows under the surface. And those people are most likely going to be the ones building the things that the people who never don't even realize they're using Tana are depending on to build the things that they're sold to. So there's kind of a cycle
Right.
going on there. That's what I'm
Mm,
foreseeing.
yeah. No, that's a great point. And I was just thinking a little bit about how Tana compares to other apps. Like it's always interesting to see like the different evolution of different software and the paths that you'll take. Because if we think on like the basic spectrum of just like a really good tool, but it's very basic, workflowy, right? Have you used workflowy much
I
in the
have
past?
not. I've heard enough people
Yeah.
mention it that I probably should, but yeah, I've never checked it out.
Yeah, I mean it's a nice software because it is very lightweight, very simple. It's an outliner, so it's Tana without any of the power, right? So it's a very basic outliner, and it's very intuitive, very easy to use. But yeah, it lacks power, right? Then on the other side, we obviously have Tana, and then I mean I don't even know how to represent this, but like there's different levels of different tools where, like for instance, Obsidian is very customizable. But what's interesting about Obsidian is that at its core, it's robust, but it doesn't have that much functionality at its core. Like really,
Hmm.
what makes Obsidian powerful is the community plugins because that allows you to bring more customization, and essentially you can code something, build a workflow, and just plug it into Obsidian, which is interesting. But obviously, that allows for a lot of complexity, and things break, and people are confused, and
Hmm.
plugins get outdated. So yeah, it has a lot of problems. Versus Tana on the other side is very powerful, but from its core at the moment there's really no way to build plugins around it. I mean, there might be some hacky ways to build certain things, but there's no real like built-in system to allow people to bring their own plugins and build their own stuff.
Hmm.
But the core of Tana is extremely powerful. Like everything at its core, from super tags, which is a really nice and advanced system, to fields, to commands, which allows you to kind of have like automate certain workflows, to AI, which in my opinion right now, like Atana is probably the best note taking tool that has built in AI in a way that goes beyond the superficial levels of like ChatGPT, like
Hmm.
just a chat. So it's pretty nice how much is added, right? So I just wonder if Tana will ever go down the path of also allowing plugins as an extra layer. I really don't know if that's something they want to get into. What do you think?
I think that whether it becomes a formal aspect of the ecosystem or not, I think that's bound to happen. Like it's already kind of happened. You
Hmm.
mentioned Andrea, I think. Like
Yep.
I don't know if that's technically a plugin, but that's basically what it is. So one way or another,
Mm.
yeah, that's like actually probably a fifth level. Like I mentioned those four levels, and then there's the people who are all of those other four. You don't need any
Right.
actual coding to do. But if you're doing the plugins, the in-depth stuff that's linking between different software, that kind of thing that I'm really hoping happens in the future, that would be another layer where they would be the foundation of the people who are building things for other people then as well, probably.
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because Andreas, he's the thing he built was essentially a Chrome extension that
Mm,
just works for Tana. It's really a stylus. Like if anyone's familiar with stylus, it's just a way in which you can manipulate the code of the particular page you're in. He built something called Tana Enhancer, which is just a very intuitive variation of stylus for Tana users. But it does open up to a lot of ideas like that, and maybe that's one of the benefits that Tana does work on a browser, because and that's one of the reasons as well of why I prefer using the browser version versus
mm,
Windows app or Mac app or anything like that, just because I can hack it a bit more, and I just love hacking stuff, just kind of like customizing things to whatever I want to do. But yeah, like I mean, being a browser app, it does allow for a lot of like people finding crazy workarounds to extend its functionality. I think
mm-hmm,
that's what happened to Rome.
mm,
I don't know if there's official, plugins for Rome, but more so hacks. I'm really not sure because yeah, anything that CSS is just the look and feel of things. It's kind of hard to change the functionality of things with CSS. Is pretty much not possible. But yeah, when you allow like JavaScript and like other software programs that allow more advanced functionality, that's when you
mm-hmm,
essentially build plugins. So I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be really cool if Tana does allow that just for power users to be able to really customize it. But I do see how that is gonna give them a lot of headache and just troubleshooting a lot more, and people in their community being like, "Hey, something broke," and it's like, "Oh, have you installed like 100 plugins,
mm-hmm.
or do you have
Yeah.
just the core functionality?" So yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of that brings up a lot of practical questions from a business perspective. Like, number
right.
one, okay, do you allow that to happen or not? Well, I guess before that is it possible for you to even control that? And depending on your technology, it might not be possible to even
Hmm.
disallow it. So then the question is, okay, so let's assume it's going to happen no matter what. If it is going to happen no matter what, are we going to just say, okay, none of it is our fault. You're on your own. It's the Wild West. We as Tana are only responsible for Tana proper. Or do you say like, okay, well, we're going to give certain plugin vendors like Tana credentials, like this is a trusted vendor. Okay, so
Hmm.
these plugins you're safe. We're not saying other ones aren't, but if they get the little like the blue check on
Yeah,
Twitter, or, but for
yeah.
Tana, if they have that, then we might not offer like services for like helping you out if something goes wrong. That'll be the plugin vendor, but like we stand behind them as in general they're reputable kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that. That's interesting, and that could happen. We're just speculating stuff like ideas, but either way, just kind of like theorizing what could happen as well. Do you think there's gonna be much of an ecosystem of like creators that build their own like? I mean, I want to go like beyond templates. Let's say plugins, right? So like Notion has a very, I mean, surprisingly large market of people just reselling templates, which they're just stupid copy paste things, Like they're not. I don't know why people buy Notion templates. I think I bought once one template and I regretted it. I dreaded it. I said like, "Oh, this is just copy paste. I'll never buy a Notion template ever again." And that was early days for Notion. I was like, "Oh, this is terrible. Why would anyone buy this?" So obviously, Tana already, like even the Tana templates right now that are available, they are a lot more powerful than what a Notion template can do, just because you can bring super tags, bring fields. So that's already very powerful. Just comparing it, again, Notion, just kind of like, yeah, I don't know what happened there, but now bringing it maybe to Obsidian plugins, they've always been free. There, I've seen a couple of paid ones, but people just don't buy them.
Mm.
There's no culture for buying it. So I just wonder if Tana will ever have like that ecosystem of, like a marketplace of people selling the plugins, or maybe we could call it templates, or maybe a mixture of both, which
Hmm.
is like a structure, like a Notion template, which is just a copy pasting, but also has some built-in functionality that would otherwise it would have taken you ages to build yourself. So yeah, I don't know how much of that you see in the future. What do you think?
Yeah. Again, going with the assumption that it's gonna happen one way or another, which I'm leaning towards that. I'm like 80-20, thinking it's gonna happen one way or another. So with that assumption, then there are other possibilities, but I would say most likely they have a choice. Is it going to be the iOS model or the Android model
Mm,
for
right.
their app store?
Yep.
Like another option is they don't even have an official store. But if I were them, I would want to have some quality control. And so like the lowest bar for that would be Android, where you're just making sure that it's not, full of viruses and stuff, but you're not too
Mm,
concerned about the look and feel and all of those things and like everything being high quality. Or you're Apple and you're like, we want everything to be of the highest quality. And we're going to actually make sure that there's no more than three or four of each particular type of solution as well. And we're going to develop
mm,
relationships with the top performing developers and everything as well. Uh, and so, yeah, I would lobby for one of those two models, and then it would be up to them, like what fits their business model best for resources that they can afford to dedicate to things like that, and how much they want to actually safeguard, like the brand, the public perception of buying things on whatever marketplace that would be. It doesn't have to technically be an official marketplace, but there's going to be something.
mm-hmm.
And if people's first experiences with Tana are with crappy plugins and stuff, then they're not going to like Tana. So I imagine they're going to want some kind of control over the perception of those things.
Yeah. No, I agree because just comparing it to the closest app that I believe has really relied on plugins, Obsidian, I've heard a lot of people they message me and they say like, "Oh, I've tried like 10 plugins and only one of them worked."
Hmm.
Right, and that's definitely an annoying experience that they obviously relate to Obsidian itself, even though the Obsidian core is super clean, super functional, and robust. It does kind of damage a bit of the reputation of the tool, but the upside is massive. So I mean, I'm a huge advocate for the idea of plugins. I would really like to see a massive ecosystem of Tana plugins because there's talented people all over the world just wanting to build a particular functionality, and for the rest of us to just say like, yep, I want to use that plugin and this plugin and that, and just making our ideal workflow. To me, an extensive, customizable system and an ecosystem that I can really do everything I want is, yeah, is a dream. Like that is definitely what I want out of like a tool like Tana, but I'm not sure how much is gonna happen.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I for one, I didn't buy anything Apple for the longest time until
Mm,
I when I was in college, I had to when I was a design student because that's all they had
right.
in the
Yeah.
computer lab. And then I got an iPhone, and then ever since then, it's been pretty much Apple for everything. And now I don't enjoy using Windows computers anymore. And so that makes me hope that Tana does something more like what Apple did than what Google or Microsoft
Mm,
did with their
yeah.
ecosystems, because I really enjoyed that walled garden experience. That
Right.
I can always depend on a certain level of quality. I never have that substandard experience.
Yeah. No, for sure. I do know what you mean, and it's interesting because I've been on the three, like right now I'm on Windows just because I have a massive PC and like the monitors. I like how Windows is kind of customizable, definitely more so than Apple. Although Apple, there's definitely some really good apps that you can plug into it. Either way, and I've also used Linux and I've also used Apple, of course. And the experience of all of those, if we were just to compare it to Tana, I do feel Tana is a lot more aligned with like the Apple Vision
Mhm.
Pro, not to the Apple Vision, right? So, pun intended. So it is kind of more aligned to how like Apple does things, which is a more curated experience, more premium feel, and so on, right? But yeah, if it was up to me, I prefer a lot more like Linuxy type apps. Like I really
Mhm.
like extensive customization, and Windows is somewhere in between Apple and Linux. Linux is extremely customizable. Apple is the least customizable, and Windows in the middle.
Mhm.
Um, the only reason I have Windows, to be honest, is just because the computer that I bought, like all of the components inside, didn't support Linux. I'd be on Linux otherwise, to be honest. And then if Apple does like allow me to have like exactly what I need, which is like a lot of power for cheaper, let's say. I don't know, like just comparing like when I decided to buy this computer, I was obviously considering Apple because I do like Apple quite a lot, but for me it's really a matter of like, okay, this is how much I'd be paying for Windows setup, and this is how much I'd be paying for the Apple setup
Mhm.
at the same price. Just Windows, like it was like 5 times better, so it just
Yeah.
made no sense. But yeah, one day I'll be back on Apple because it is a much better experience. Although I still want Tana to be as customizable as
Yeah.
possible. So yeah.
I had an idea actually because we came up with these 5 levels. That lowest level
Right.
of the like the plugin developer, maybe that's where they're full Apple. Like
Mm,
we want maybe not total control, but just absolute quality bar there. And then maybe the
right.
next level above that, where it's like the mad scientist builders,
Right.
that's more like Android. There's some
Mm-hmm.
quality, some control, but it's not like absolute. But then once you get way up to the top of those people who don't even know that they're using Tana, there's no possible brand damage to Tana if things go wrong up there. So why would they care?
Right.
That can be the Wild West way up there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and if Tana really wants to like make sure that beginners don't accidentally mess things up, I mean, I just came up with this idea, like sparked from what he said, which is like, what if they literally have people that want to be a mad scientist, they literally have to do an onboarding with Tana or do some sort of
Hmm.
application so that they literally turn on the check for you, be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you're qualified to mess around, right? But if someone like who barely can use a mouse and has it upside down, like they're not gonna give him access to
Have you
the
been
more advanced
watching me when I
customization.
work?
Have you seen the film Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? Do you know the
No,
film?
I haven't.
Oh man, either way, you gotta watch it. It's so good. But like the dad, he doesn't know how to use a computer. But like the world is at stake. Like the world might end if he doesn't do it. And he's on a phone call with his son, and he says, "Just drag the mouse across the desktop." And he goes like this and destroys everything in the desk because he doesn't understand the concept of a mouse. It's amazing.
I will watch that with a wife now.
Yeah, for sure. Highly recommended. Either way, man. Yeah, so cool. Let's start wrapping it up. Any final thoughts that you would like to add?
No, well, actually, maybe 30 seconds. So you
Yeah.
prefer the browser. I love to have like standalone apps whenever possible. Like
Right.
Figma, I use a standalone
Mm.
app. And I think one of the reasons is I like just
Mm.
kind of the mental separation of like, I can't
Right.
open another window next to that. This is for designing. Same thing with Tana. That's why I can't wait
Yeah.
until I can have multiple Tana windows of the standalone app open. You can't
For
currently
sure.
do that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree. Is a good point because even Figma. Let's just use Figma as an example, real quick. Figma I use in the browser because there's certain aspects of it that isn't as dark mode as I wish it were,
Hmm.
and I use a Chrome extension to do that, right? To just make it more dark mode in certain areas, right? Tana in particular, I do because I agree with you. I do like that separate experience, and I don't like seeing the top bar of the URL when I'm using the app in Figma
Yeah.
either. So I tend to full screen. So yeah, it's just really for the extra functionality because I do like customizing things with Chrome extensions as much as possible. And Tana, the main reason is so that I can use CSS inside of it. But even then, like Tana, I don't use. I actually never use it as a normal browser tab. I always have it as a Chrome installed app, the one that you can create a shortcut. It looks like the Windows app,
Hmm.
but it does still allow me to have like Chrome extensions. So
Hmm.
yeah, it is definitely a weird balance that I have to find for that. So yeah, I get
Yeah.
you. All right, yeah. So great conversation. Shall we wrap it up?
Let's take it home.
Nice, cool. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can check out the link in the description to join our free community where you can have access to the really cool resources that we're building there, as well as obviously interacting with other people that want to learn Tana the same as you. And like Nick was saying at the beginning, there's a lot of really cool updates to the course that I think you're going to enjoy in case you're interested in that. But otherwise, you can just join for free and we'd love to have you there. With that said, hope you enjoyed this podcast and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Cheers.